Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Mom Mode. We have Mandy Davis on the podcast this week, and I'm so excited to have Mandy on. She was a former school principal who turned homeschool educator for her own children and advocate for all of homeschooling and is helping thousands of families, I think everywhere, right? Just nationally and with her program that she created, Homebuilt Education. And so I am just so excited to have Mandy on the podcast. So thank you for joining.
Oh, Nicole, thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you as well. And for those who don't know you, can you just give us a little background of who you are?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Mandy Davis, former educator and former school principal. From my decades of experience inside of schools, both public and private, I decided and made a big decision to leave my career and pull my children with me and homeschool. I on across online platforms work with just over 400,000 families in what home education can look like for them worldwide. And this April, I have two of the first books coming out, the Homeschool Bible and the Homeschool Bible Parent Planner, foundational books that help any family to start homeschooling.
That's amazing. I'm so excited for those to come out, and I definitely want to talk more about those books. Um, and you've written other books as well, correct?
I have one other out, my memoir, A Matter of Principle, which kind of goes through my journey as a principal and how I landed where I am today as a homeschool mom.
Um, I want to read that because that just seems like it would be such a good one. And just hearing, your story, because I feel like you really were in the trenches of, the traditional schooling system. And it takes a lot to go from what you've always thought your life would look like to then completely going the opposite direction. What originally started planting that seed for you, when you were a principal and like, what has that journey been like?
Sure. Well, if it's okay, I'm going to start way back when I was a student and just my educational experience. I went through the public school system myself, and I think anyone who saw what that looked like on paper would say that I was an exceptional student. I got good grades. I was very involved in school. Um, but my personal experience wasn't great. I had um, a lot of what I realize now was anxiety. And I had a lot of pressure I'd put on myself where my learning journey became very performative. And unfortunately, I also experienced a lot of bullying. Now, when you're young um, and you're in situations with peer pressure and bullying, it's so easy to blame the other children. As I got older, I started questioning where were all of the adults because no one seemed to stop or change anything for me. So, after my time at the university, I knew that I wanted to become an educator and change the lives of children who, at school, similar to myself, just didn't feel like they fit and give them the best experience possible where they would leave loving learning. Right out of college, I began teaching fifth grade and very quickly learned that all of my goals to be the kind of exceptional educator I wanted to be were not goals of the profession. And, as then a 22-year-old teacher in a fifth grade classroom, similar to how I was as a student, um, I think anyone that would look in would say, she is a fantastic teacher. I had kids passing the tests, the state exam.
Hmm.
I had decent grading in my classrooms. I had good attendance in my classrooms. The parents liked me. I followed administrative rules. But again, all of those goals in making this a personalized experience, making this a positive experience for the child, it wasn't happening. I worked with several fantastic people that all seem to have their hands tied and were in a very similar position to myself. So at that point, I decided, okay, I think I need to get into admin because I think what's happening is that teachers aren't able to be the kind of light in the classroom that they want to be. So maybe if I become an admin, then I can really change these roles ground up. And that became the new goal. So fast forward, at this point, I'm now a mother, which completely changes
Mm-hmm.
everything and completely changed even before when I had all of these really positive goals to and how I want to impact every child. Now having my own kids, it was just a whole new world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and being now a school principal that my daughters attended this school. I mean, my heart was in it and this was it. This was, oh gosh, just wait until you see this impact. We're going to do this and it's going to be phenomenal. And it did not take long at all for me to see there's even more red tape when you're an admin. My name was on the door, and other than that, there wasn't anything I could do. I couldn't bring more recess time to our higher fifth grade students who at that point had very limited 15 minutes a day. I couldn't change that as a school principal. I couldn't change homework policies. I couldn't change outdated curriculum when you're looking at teaching science classes from textbooks from the 90s. Um, I couldn't really do much of anything. But the biggest shock to my system was that as the principal at my girls' school, I was kept arm's length from their education. And all I could think of was I if I'm the principal of this school and I cannot impact my child's education, there's no hope for these other parents, these very well-intentioned parents. Um, and it was too much. On top of all of that, I had anxiety. I mean, from my own educational experience to becoming admin in education, I don't think the anxiety ever went away. It just shifted from student to teacher to admin. My anxiety was through the roof. I was in a workplace that I would call toxic. And then again, all I could think of was, okay, I need to leave because my goals, they're not going to be able to be met. But I can't leave my kids in this environment knowing what it's doing to my inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And I left and I pulled our kids. My husband and I had a lot of very big conversations at this time. He was also public school. Um, and it became very clear that I would never impact as many children as I wanted. But if I didn't do anything, um, I wouldn't even be able to impact my own children.
Wow.
So it was time for me to at least advocate for their success and their happiness.
Yep.
Um, and if the only thing that I can do is something that I swore, and first I never considered homeschooling. I mean, never. Um, and I never thought that I'd homeschool. But, for us, if that's what it takes, we're going to do it.
Yeah. And I can definitely relate when you're saying, when you're talking bullying. I mean, myself, I don't really share this that often, but I actually left school as a senior in high school.
Hmm.
And I got my GED. I still went to DePaul University where I wanted to go. And I always tell people I just took an alternative route um, because of bullying. I was like, I came home and I told my parents, I'm like, have more anxiety going to school about the social aspects of what is happening in the day to day than
Mhm,
what I'm learning. And it's almost like I wasn't even learning because I was nervous about who was in what class, who I was
mhm.
going to see during the walking period to the next class. Um, I felt this is so bad to say, and there's probably people that disagree, but I felt like I was in a prison. Like I was just waking up, going to school, wasn't learning, was more worried about what I would, the things that would be said about me I just felt trapped. And
Right.
so my junior year, I was showing up to school and then leaving in the middle of the day. And I didn't tell my parents at this time. I was like, they have their own stuff going on. I'm just going to do what I need to do. And then when it was senior year, I was like, I'm done. And my parents were like, that's fine. But, you want to keep the direction that you want to go with your life. You need to keep that focus. And I got my GED like right away. I was able to get it. Um, so I completely feel to my core, what you're feeling. And I feel that till this day. Um,
Yes.
my husband and I talk about this. I'm like, because we have our daughter, and I'm like, do we want to put her in that through that? My brothers, very similar. They're much younger than I am. They're 6 and 8 years younger than me. So my parents actually pulled them out in sixth grade and fourth grade. Similar situation. My brother was throwing fits to get on the bus. I mean, having meltdowns. And my mom was like, what is going on? He wouldn't tell her. Then he finally was like, they're slamming my hands in the lockers and they're pushing me and all this. And my mom's like, what is going on? And, my dad went to the school and they're like, well, we're not seeing it happen. So there's nothing that we can change. If we're not seeing this happen, then that it is what it is. And my parents were like, they were fuming.
Yes.
And so I definitely come from a background where my parents had all the hope in the school system. It's not that we didn't.
Right.
Um, but I would say that like my brothers, the the thing is like my youngest brother wasn't affected by it. My other brother, he was a little bit, but I think they pulled him out in time to where it didn't become his identity. And for me, it started becoming my identity of like, I was believing what these kids were saying about me. And then other kids were believing things that weren't true. And so when you look at that, and then you look at like, what's really the benefit here? Because you're not really learning then. You're not really getting what you're supposed to be getting out of school. And I didn't even think of how
Sure.
you mentioned.
It's crazy. We we see, across every grade level from kindergarten to 12th grade, all of the negative impacts from bullying to anxiety to, those buzzwords that schools will use to make it sound as though it's the best option. Rigorous. Rigorous usually just means that the pace is too fast for the average student. All of these things that we see that are hurting children's emotional health, mental health, and love of learning. Why we continue in 2026 to write these off as, it's a rite of passage or, it's normal. Too many times I would have parents sit in my office and I would be talking about a bullying situation, whether it was their child doing the bullying or whether their child was being bullied. I definitely worked with a lot of wonderful parents that took it very seriously, but I also, through my years in school, saw so many parents excuse the behavior as just a part of school. Oh, that's
Mhm.
happening. That happened to me. Or, oh, it could be worse. Why are we normalizing this for our kids? And you're so right in feeling stuck. And for teenagers, especially, my oldest is 14 now. The the school day goes against the biology of a teenager. Wake up early when the circadian rhythm is not to wake up early, is take all the sleep at this age. Be in the building for 7 to 8 hours a day, come home with mountains of homework. There's limited supervision available. You are going to experience your day how you're going to experience it. And that, I feel like in those pockets of unsupervised time is when all of this bullying occurs, in that time
Mhm.
walking walker to classroom, in that, um, it's, it's just heartbreaking.
It really is. And then, I mean, the other topic is how many kids take their own lives every year.
Oof.
You always hear. And I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, you don't see it everywhere, but sometimes I'll come across it on social media. And I'm just like, this pains me
Sure.
to see because, those are the children that probably felt stuck with no way out. Maybe their parents weren't listening. Maybe their parents were trying to help, but it wasn't fast enough. Um, for you. And like, I didn't even think about, these textbooks from the 90s and
Yes.
the amount of daylight, like we're supposed to get daylight, right? Like sun and vitamin D and just like, you're just in this building all day with limited windows, most of the schools. What I guess when you made this decision, so you said you pulled your children out as well as left. Did you do that kind of all at once? And what resources did you have? So like what did you kind of educate yourself with before pulling them out and how was this time? Because that's a huge transition.
Sure, sure. Um, it was hard. This was a really difficult moment in our family's life, because it's so many major changes right at the same time.
Mhm.
When I left my career, I left my network of friends and coworkers, um, and pretty much reached the pinnacle of what I thought I was working my entire life towards outside of being a mother and a wife, what I used to call my calling, and
Mhm.
just praying to God every night that, okay, is this the path? Is this the path? Because it feels like a pretty sharp turn to what, for 35 years thought I was working towards.
Mhm.
Um, for our family, kind of the order I left my role, and then it was pretty quick that I pulled my girls, and this was all over the summer months as well. Um, at that point, we were living on a homestead in the country, and we were feeling isolated, losing my network and friendships. Um, I watched my kids lose several friendships as well because remember, they especially right when families found out they were not returning to the school, keep in mind, they also recognized me as their children's principal, and now I'm gone
Mhm.
too. And I don't think there was many at all situations where there was an intentional riff, where a parent was upset. I think more so people just weren't sure, like, what does this mean? And in order to kind of avoid an uncomfortable situation or an uncomfortable conversation, and being as, my girls didn't have cell phones where their friends could text or reach out to them or invite them to things. Everything was, through the parents. We stopped getting calls and invitations. And so this is all right at the takeoff of, okay, we're going to homeschool. And by the way, the largest misconception is you'll have no social life and you won't be socialized. And now we're facing, not having a community around us. At that point, I got onto social media. That is what brought me onto Instagram.
Okay.
There weren't homeschoolers in our community where I could easily find them. I found some families later through social media, actually, that
Mhm.
lived in my area. But I got on Instagram and just started sharing, "This is what we're doing. Is anyone else out there?" And moms just started connecting with me and saying, "I'm out here, and our kids are similar ages, and I'm out here." And it was just so amazing. Um, I I took the rest of the summer and the time we needed to try to put together a plan for the fall, and, I failed horribly. I mean, horribly failed. I tried to outline everything as though I was my children's teacher. I mean, this is where my experience was, right? So I
Mhm.
wrote lesson plans nearly for an entire quarter for each of them. I had a planner that was color coded hourly. I mean, I felt really good and I felt accomplished in it and ready. And then it was our first day to homeschool. And within like the third hour, I was failing because I was behind on everything. And what do you mean? And I felt like I was losing my mind. Um, I unknowingly was trying to create school at home.
Hmm.
And it was terrible. I mean, it was terrible. Um, being early in our homeschool experience, my husband, um, seeing the struggle, seeing our loss of community, seeing how frustrated I was at the end of the day, um, he said, "Stop." And we talk about that moment all the time. Um, and it's the number one reason that I tell parents, get on the same page to homeschool before you start, because there's going to be moments when either sways and the other needs to be the rock.
Hmm.
And we weren't quite on the same page. And when my person said stop, I was like, okay, it doesn't feel good. I don't think I'm doing this right. My husband doesn't think I should be doing this. And like everything, it was just the hardest takeoff to homeschooling I think you could possibly have. And while I think a lot of people would assume you were an educator, you were a principal, like you know, some people will say even on social media, of course you homeschool, you know. Um, no, I did not pick this up easily, and I certainly did not decide to homeschool because I was an educator. I decided to homeschool because I saw too much in the system,
Yeah.
and I knew that that wasn't an option. Um, but as a family, we had to fail really hard together so we could kind of pick up all of the pieces and then take off in the right way. And really, this was one of my key motivators in why I wrote the Homeschool Bible, because at the time, I just wanted a foundational, this is where you need to get your mind to, and this is what you need to think about, and then you've got it, just homeschool. And I couldn't find that.
I love that because I feel like that's where my mind goes. You know,
Right.
um I've never homeschooled. I've never been in the educational system. I'm like, what does my daughter need to know versus what is she does she not need to know? Um and so I'm
Sure.
in my mind, I always go to where do I start? Um and I think that's the most intimidating part and I think that's why a lot of parents just follow what is basically the path for most of us, which is preschool, now kindergarten, now grade school, and so on. And so, with the Homeschool Bible, as well as just your personal advice for parents, like for those who are scared or don't know where to start, and this can be any age, this can be, they've never had their kids in the system, or they're maybe wondering if they should pull them out. What advice can you give to those parents?
Try it. You're not ever going to be a teacher. And you know what? You don't need a teaching certificate or an educational background in teaching, because you are not a teacher. You will not have state mandates on your shoulders, or parent meetings, or admin meetings, or data reviews, or metric progress charts, or looking at state tests. You're not a teacher. And truly, thank God for that.
Mhm.
Really, because all you need is to know no one's going to fight for the success and happiness of your child the way you will. I'm going to try it. It's funny because you can walk away from the school system right now. You don't have to wait till the start of a school year. You don't have to wait to a certain age. Wherever your child is, you can walk away and then return. There, no one in your district, no school or teacher will say, You tried something else." No one. Anytime
Mhm.
you want to return, you can return. I have worked with homeschoolers where they're in a different season of life and they've popped back in. And then they got to a better place and they pulled back out. And I don't feel like we talk about that enough. School choice can change every single year. And there are so many choices that are not just school system, private school, homeschool. There's
Hmm.
charters now. There's hybrid. There's micro schools. My oldest, um, this year, because she is of high school age, started hybriding. And the main reason we did that is because she's so strong in performance arts and wanted to get connected um, with different opportunities locally. So she homeschools. She goes to our local school for choir. Now, in order, so let's say you have a high schooler who's interested in playing football for the school or any sport or any extracurricular activity. Several states allow this, but differ slightly. So just look into the legality in your state. But you typically need 5 credit hours to be able to participate. 5 credit hours is one class per semester. So she goes in, she takes choir, and she's in select show choir. She can choose if she wants to audition for the school's musicals. And it's been an absolute dream. It's been an absolute dream. Um, there are so many options. All that to say, there are so many options available today
Yeah.
that we're just not talking about enough.
I didn't even
And
think of that you can do the
right.
hybrid or you just don't, yeah, in your mind, you automatically like shut that out. Like it's homeschool or nothing or going to school or nothing. Um, that's incredible.
Yes. Yes. I mean, and it's for our family, it's been all of the perks and advantages of what she wants in activities
Hmm.
without being stuck.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, I mean, this brings up the topic of I feel like so and this is more I feel like I don't feel like it's talked about that much now, but before it was like, oh, if you homeschool your kids are antisocial and
Mm.
how do they make friends? And, you know, I feel like that is something that's brought up a lot. You know, like when my parents pulled my brothers out, I remember people being like, well, aren't you nervous they're not going to be able to like communicate with friends? And my brothers were friends with all the kids down the street. You know, when they came home from school, my brothers were out there with them. Um, you know, you could still put them in sports and not, you know, whether it's through the school like your daughter's doing or through the park district. So there's so many different ways that your children can get involved. And then um is there like I've heard of co-ops where like other
Yes.
homeschool parents get together and bring their kids together. So
Yes.
I've also heard of that option as well. And I think that's amazing. Like if your children are younger, I think.
So I just want to go back and touch on the socialization piece
Yeah.
because Nicole, this is still so prevalent today. It's a misconception that's followed us into adulthood.
Hmm.
And it's our generation that has this in their brain that a homeschool child cannot be social. Um, as a former educator and principal, I have never worked in a school where socialization was a goal, where where teachers and admin are sitting down and actively saying, "How can we provide socialization and healthy socialization?" So, so what many parents are actually calling socialization is just proximity. Now, as a teacher, and as a school principal, I have seen classrooms that make intentional seating charts so friends are not seated next to one another. I've been the quiet kid that was placed next to the talker slash misbehaving child so that there was balance in that area. Um, I have seen and heard teachers say, this is not the place to socialize. This is not the time to talk. You are surrounded in rows by 25 plus kids your same age. You have minimal supervision, which means socialization is being learned through the actions of your peers instead of healthy models. I
Hmm.
don't know where we got so confused to call that socialization and why we're not instead seeing that this is the antithesis and actually teaching very unhealthy social skills. Um, in our homeschool day, we're learning anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. 4 hours for my high schooler. My son, who's 4, is just hands-on learning and play all day. My 12-year-old is at about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and she's done with her learning. So we have a whole day to fill with activities and groups and classes that we take and we want to enjoy. We have a homeschool learning center near us, and so my daughter takes a cooking class, and my son takes a
Wow.
painting class. Co-ops, which are small groups of homeschoolers that meet up and where parents can lead and use their skills to teach courses, to connect together, to learn about nature, depending on the style of the co op. Church activities. My oldest has time to volunteer and to work. And my kids have friends of all ages. And I think that's just key. It's been
Yeah.
amazing to watch them have time for mentors and community connections where we otherwise would never have have seen or made those connections because they just quite frankly they wouldn't have time.
Yeah. That's so
And,
true.
and even as just a parent who had children because my kids, my daughters um both experienced both public and private school. Just as a parent that experienced both of those sides, whew, we do less as homeschoolers than I did as a public or private school parent. As a public or private school parent, my day was so filled with car lines and pickups and changes in the schedule day and homework at night and um, It it was so filled, and so it's not the time constraint that I think many believe it to be as well.
Yeah, I love that point because I was thinking that I'm like, how many hours do you spend in a car line picking your child up? Or, if you're an at home parent with toddlers and then your one that goes to school is sick and you have to then transition your whole day because now they need to come home, or there's just so many things.
Yeah.
Um, Now, how did your children react to coming out of school and being homeschooled?
Sure. It was interesting. So, um, my oldest at that time was in 5th, and my, middle was in 3rd, and my son was just a little baby nugget at that time. The girls had always, um been in school settings. I homeschooled when they were really young, but they didn't really view it as that yet. They just viewed it as a late start. And then, of course, during the COVID timeline, they were home. Oh, which remind me because I want to talk to you about that too. Um, but when they were in school, they did very well. They both were very social, meaning they enjoyed the aspect of being in a classroom around people their same age. They were fine with that. They
Mhm.
were fine with homework. And I would say they were both what I call system compliant learners. Not every child is. And just because your child's not a system compliant learner doesn't mean they're behind or something's wrong with them. But it's just a fact. We're not all system compliant learners. I was too, meaning I could go to school and I could follow the rules of school. I could keep up with the average pace of school and I could get good grades in school. System compliant learner. They were both that way. When we told them they weren't going to go back, it was hard from the aspect of the unknown. Will I still see my friends? What will
Mhm.
I do during the day? What will, there were a lot of questions. Um, and when I kind of talked a lot about everything we did wrong in the beginning, the big thing we did right was talking about it. And we would talk about it every day. My anxiety to homeschool, I had to accept right away was going to be completely different from the kids. my anxiety was, can I do this? Will I do this well? Will my kids grow up to resent me or this
Mhm.
option that I made for them? What if it doesn't work? My anxiety, their concerns. What will this look like? How will it go? What will my day look like? Will I see my friends? And so my job, alongside my husband, was to address those questions every day and also create a home culture that slowed us down. Because I think all of us were just used to running so hard, not even realizing we're all running in opposite directions. Okay, you have your lunch, bye, you have your stuff, bye, you have it. And and instead, when we made that choice to homeschool, okay, we're all going to walk and in the same
Mhm.
direction together. And I would say it took a month before I just remember my oldest saying, I'm never going back. I'm never going back. And my middle, I mean, she probably fell in love with homeschooling even sooner. They were good in school. They are good being homeschooled, but homeschooling's good for them. And that was
Mhm.
kind of a big difference. And then slowly through these past handfuls of years, um, they've unloaded experiences and stories that just make your heart as a mom break open, um, on how school wasn't okay for them. You know what, mom, that I've been thinking about is, this situation probably wasn't normal. And my oldest gave me permission to share this. So I'm going to share one specific story. And again, she did really well in school. And as I shared, she is very strong in performance arts, and currently hybrids. So she can be in performance arts groups. When she was in fifth grade, her friends had her audition for a musical on the playground. They had all the girls audition. These were who she would consider her best friends. And um, they proceeded to tell her she was the only one that didn't get a part because she wasn't good. And so she cried, and her teacher called me that night, and I was the principal, mind you, and just said, how should we handle this situation? Because I don't think the kids meant it. Do you want me to call their parents? To which I said, absolutely. Or I'm happy to call their parents because they may not have meant it, but I think that there's still a lesson here
Mhm.
so everyone can move forward. So that was kind of the situation. Um, my daughter completely stopped singing following that. And she did not sing again until we were about 3 months into homeschooling. And she said, would it be okay if I took, voice lessons again? And I said, absolutely. And then slowly she would share with me more stories that as a child, how can you name bullying? How can you say, I think I'm being bullied? So many kids, um, in our schools are not taught what bullying is and feels like. So they don't know to name it. And so instead, when it happens to them, they think something's wrong with me. This is my fault. And it's internalized and it hurts their self esteem. And then it turns into anxiety or
Mhm.
depression and all of these bigger things. And so she was finally able to name it. And um, all of that to say, that wasn't a situation where I thought, when it happened, you know, this is it. This is terrible. I'm outraged. Um, but it is a situation that my homeschooled child, you know, at the age of then 12, was able to reflect on and say, that wasn't right. It didn't make
Mhm.
me feel good. And I don't want to go back to that.
Yeah.
And for our family, that situations like that have been so impactful. And I hear these very similar stories all the time.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, I can relate. Like, I think, when you're telling me this story, I think of things. I mean, I had things that happened when I was younger too. And, you just think like my mom always told me you shine them on. Like,
Right.
you shine them on. You don't stop what you love. You don't stop being who you are. You shine them on. But at that time, I didn't know how to do that. And in high school, even in high school, my mom would be like, if someone pushes you, I mean, this is bad, but my mom's like, if someone were to shove you, you shove them right back. But I didn't do that. I was like, I didn't
Sure.
want to do that. I was more timid.
Mhm.
Um, but that's a beautiful story. Obviously not a beautiful story in the beginning, but a beautiful outcome in ending with your daughter falling in love with a passion that she has again that was once put in the back of her mind because of others.
Right.
Um, as far as the homeschool Bible, I want to talk more on the homeschool Bible. Can you can you just tell everyone that's listening what was your passion behind it and what can they expect from the book?
Oh gosh, I think I just had this vision. I mean, the Homeschool Bible it's a huge name because I just wanted one single resource. One single resource where a parent can open it, read it today, and homeschool tomorrow. One single resource to bring parents from preschool age through graduating high school, through looking to college, career, what's next. Um, and really, also for those new homeschoolers that just hear words like loop schedule or Charlotte Mason and wonder what it is, but don't want to Google all the time what that is, one resource. And that's what I made. This book in no way is this is what I did and you should do the same. It's just fact driven. These are the philosophies of education that many homeschoolers take. Find your fit. This is how you can think about selecting curriculum. Which one works for you? You select it. Um, all of the glossary should be helpful for the lifetime of homeschooling. And all of the legal side, the scheduling side, I really just tried to include it all. And then, of
Mhm.
course, alongside it is the parent planner that you can then open up. And if you're a journaler like I am, or just someone who wants to then organize your thoughts, can open it up and every chapter coincides. So, like, okay, I just learned about all these different ways to think about how to set up my homeschool. And now in the planner, it's asking you which one resonated. Let's do it. Let's create the schedule so you have it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the Homeschool Bible is a big name because you think of the Bible and you just think of all these different chapters and the beginning and the middle and the end and just everything. And so I really love that. You mentioned that you wanted to circle back on something, and I believe it
COVID.
was it? Okay, let's
Yes.
talk that.
Yes. COVID, thank you for remembering. COVID is the timeline we had emergency schooling. And I also think that COVID is going to be just that damning misconception of this generation that could carry into the future as to what homeschooling is. So where our generation kind of is going off of, the more you know commercials with stay in school being the message and the socialization ideas. Kids today experienced emergency learning, and I'm already hearing it from parents saying, we already tried homeschooling during COVID. It was not for us. And I've spoken with several students. Oh, homeschooling was terrible. I did that during COVID. This was not homeschooling. Homeschooling, what kids experience during an emergency schooling, and what parents experience was actually a front row seat to the school system in your living room. And what schools did was, okay, we're not ready. We don't know. We don't have a plan for this. Let's hop on Zoom and we'll do the lessons on Zoom. And it's funny to me because parents would say things like, oh, it was so boring. And they'd sit and they'd watch, and my child hated it. And I just want to scream. This is what they do every day. You're just not seeing it from your living room. And
So
your
true.
child being out of the pressure cooker environment of sitting in the four walls of the school, but being in their safe home environment, it was time to be vocal. I hate this. I don't want to do this. This is boring. Can I turn it off? They're telling you those things because you're their person. This is their cry for help. But so many took it as, ugh, never want to homeschool. Promise you, that is not what
So
homeschooling
true.
is.
Well, the other thing is I feel like so many kids were labeled with like ADHD. Like my kid, no one's paying attention. These kids aren't paying attention.
Mm.
And that's
Oh,
a big thing too.
oh, absolutely.
So, and I feel like that's like more and more, being the diagnosis for, kids not wanting to sit and learn or they're fidgeting too much, all this
That
stuff.
which goes against everything we know about childhood development research and educational research, how kids should be moving, how kids
Mhm.
don't learn at the same pace. And it is such a red flag, the increase, as you said, of diagnoses we're handing out and labeling children instead of understanding the environment is the flag. The pace
Mhm.
is the flag. You know, this this idea of you don't learn at the pace I'm moving means you're not learning correctly. You're behind is so misguided.
Yeah, I would agree.
Mm,
One more thing for the parents, I know you had mentioned that sometimes parents jump into homeschooling, sometimes they put their children back into the school system. Um, there's homes where two parents need to work.
mm,
Is there any advice for those parents that like they can't be home with their children to homeschool?
mm.
Or maybe the hope is to get there. Like what advice would be for those parents who are like, well, I wish I could, but I can't.
Sure, sure. A couple things. So, first, it's look at the age of your child and your current options. Um, it's interesting to me because so many parents are coming home from work and then helping their kids with 2 to 3 hours of homework. You could just be homeschooling them at that time, and that's perfectly okay. Now, I understand though that means for many, care would need to go somewhere else during the day. So it's really looking at what can we do, what's feasible to do, where are our jobs flexible, where are they inflexible, what community and help do we have around us, and if all of those factors can't be in alignment right now, that's okay. There are several ways, if you are a parent with a child in the school system, that you can still be in charge, that you can still be the leader of their educational journey. And so, okay, my kid is going to school. Um, what can I do? Sit down with their teacher, sit down with the principal, um, understand the curriculum that the school's using. And the big one is draw your firm boundaries. My child has homework every night. It's 2 hours of homework and we don't have any family time at that point. Draw your boundary. And it could look different for everyone. The key that I say, that I share with parents is picking the amount of time that you're okay working to practice skills that your child does not understand. So, not I'm going to do repetitive, busy work, but okay, we're willing to practice for 15 minutes and we'll turn in what we get through. That's okay. So, having those conversations, I don't think I think schools, admin and teachers are doing everything they can, but they are working in a system that has their wrists so tied. There's there's not the flexibility to do everything they want to do. So a lot of
Mhm.
times these kinds of conversations aren't publicized. Hey, by the way, if you have a homework request, sit down because our teachers would love to take 25 separate contracts of what homework's going to look like this year. Okay. I understand that teachers are very busy, but as a parent, this is also your right. And
Mhm.
so take that.
Yeah. No, I definitely love that too. And like I said, it goes back to there's so many things that like, oh, we have to follow this. Our kids have to go into the educational system. We have to follow all the rules. Like it's almost like we feel like we don't have a voice. And so it's really important to know that we do.
Mm, absolutely. And lastly, just as a reminder, it's not just public, private, or homeschooling. If parents have that inflexible schedule, look for a micro school. Look for, it's been so amazing to see these former teachers who have left and are running micro schools in their basement. And just connecting with 4 kids, all different ages. It's incredible. And it's for, 3 hours of learning a day. Um, Connect with local charter programs or online options, or even look for that hybrid option.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my work schedule might be flexible Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Great, hybrid.
Is there any like tool, like, is there any, like, do you just Google this, like hybrid programs near me, micro schools near me, or is there like a certain homeschool
So my
Bible?
book so start with my book. Start with my book because it's going to outline all of the different options. And
Okay.
then and then really it points you in the direction of where the legalities for your specific state are as well. HSLDA is a really good starting point to see what does homeschooling look like in my state and what could my options be. There are new opportunities, new schools popping up. I mean, it's crazy. I used to always say homeschooling looks nothing like it did 10 years ago, but really at this point, it looks nothing like it did 2, even 1 year ago because so many amazing programs, continue to come on the scene. So many free resources continue to come on the scene.
Hmm.
So just really, um building your community, getting on and finding, your local groups of homeschoolers, even if you don't homeschool yet, just hear what they're talking about and what they're using and what they're doing and where they go. Because so many businesses today too locally have homeschool specific days and discount days and outings and free museum passes for homeschool families. Oh, take
Wow.
advantage of teacher passes. We get as homeschoolers, you can create a teacher ID card and then get all of the discounts because you're considered a teacher of your children. So
Oh my
just
gosh.
little things like that. Um,
And
I
do you
feel like
have all this on your website as well?
my website's a really good place to start,
Because you have a lot of
homebuilteducation.com.
resources on there.
Yeah.
Well, that book looks beautiful. When does the
Thank you.
Homeschool Bible release?
April
This
7th.
April.
Yes.
The seven's a good day.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It has been such a joy to talk to you, to have you talk about your knowledge, your story, your journey of your family. And I'm so excited for this episode to come out and for the Homeschool Bible to release.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it was such a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.